Now, let's just remind you one of the big stories we covered in the week, and it was Liam Halligan getting behind all of this. He reported that by 2030, 150,000 children will be homeless, potentially living in B&Bs and other emergency accommodation, and that's according to the National Housing Federation. 1.5 million families will be on the council house waiting list, and that's up by more than a third.
They say Britain is now in the midst of a housing emergency. That's according to the boss of one leading housing association, a theme at the heart of Keir Starmer's speech at last week's Labour conference, of course. Here's our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, to explain more.
On this Bedfordshire building site, dreams are being made of a safe and permanent home. This project is led by Grand Union, a not-for-profit housing association. They're building 40 social housing units here for low-income and vulnerable families, paying below market rents. But with over 1 million households on the council house waiting list, these much-needed homes barely scratch the surface.
I think when we have 150,000 children sleeping in temporary accommodation, and it's not really temporary because some of it has lasted over 10 years, then that is an emergency. We're damaging people's futures.
For Ian and Cheryl Jarvis, social housing became their only option when their daughter Keris was diagnosed with hydrocephalus. Keris unable to walk or talk, life in a 7th floor flat became impossible for this close-knit family.
We were paying over the odds for privately renting, so even though we had 2 wages at the time, once Keris came along, the wages started to dwindle because we were needing to be more out of work. So then to look after the daughter, because she was always in hospital visits. Yeah. So it just became too expensive. Then if we'd have carried on trying to be in the private side, we would have been probably worse off than we were. We'd been flat on our faces.
By 2030, the National Housing Federation estimates 1.5 million low-income and vulnerable households will be on the waiting list for affordable social housing. That's a third more than today. As a result, 150,000 children will be living in temporary accommodation, such as bed and breakfasts and emergency hostels. That's 6 children in every school in the country.
Essential, we can't shower any other
For Ian and Cheryl, given Keris's special needs, Grand Union has been a lifesaver.
I dread to think where we would be, if we'd be together or separated, if enabled to be living with our daughter, because she needs a lot of equipment and she needs a 24-hour care. So yeah, I don't know where we'd be without Grand Union and being in this house.
Elsewhere in Bedfordshire is Grand Union's newly built Chamomile Gardens, sheltered accommodation for social tenants aged 55 plus. Jackie recently lost her leg in an accident. She says living here is a godsend, but social housing is a lottery.
This seems to be an area where some people are struggling to get anywhere and others just seem to be lucky. I don't know how other way to explain it.
With the media focused on home ownership, Aileen Evans says the need for more social housing is often ignored. But the alternative is the state subsidising vulnerable families to rent on the open market.
Successive governments need to invest in social housing. Otherwise, we will consign families to lives where their futures are stolen, and we'll have a burgeoning housing benefit bill that will cost the taxpayer far more than building social housing in the first place.
While Rishi Sunak failed to mention housing in his party conference speech, Keir Starmer put more homes at the centre of his offer to voters. This could be the issue that decides the next general election. Liam Halligan, GB News, in Bedfordshire.